Hello, people. My name is Sheila. Where am I looking? First of all, I'm sorry. Okay. Hi, people. My name is Sheila, and we finally come to the end of my faith journey. Not that the faith journey has ended, but it's the final part that I'll be narrating because the journey obviously continues. So in this segment, I talk about life after campus, what it is like to follow Jesus after campus, and of course that's where I'm at now still. So I graduated in 2008 from my career with a bachelor in community psychology, and just after uni I was wondering what to do. I knew I wanted to actually work in Gulu because we had visited a camp in 2006 in my second year, and I wanted to work in Gulu, but I was thinking of work as a psychologist. I wasn't thinking of work like in ministry and anything. So I looked for opportunities like in the papers and all. So between January when we finished in 2007, actually graduated in January 2008, I was kind of in a job hunt, but also at church at Watoto they were looking for people to go and work in Gulu, and one of the people one of the group of people they needed were children's workers. There was a children's ministry, but there was no one coordinating it, so they were asking people to go and do the ministry. I was very, very reluctant because I had my fears of working with the church. It had nothing to do with pay. It had everything to do with having high expectations and being disappointed. So, I mean, I kept ignoring that call. We kept going to church and they would say, if you know you can, go, blah, blah, blah. They kept saying it over and over. Until one time I said, you know what? If I go to church today and they talk about it, I'm signing up. That's what happened. So when I was convinced that, you know, let me go, what's the worst that can happen? It's still working in Gulu and it's working with people, so that's what psychology is also about. So I went to the pastor, to the children then, and I told her. She didn't believe me at first, but anyway, eventually worked it through, and there I was in Gulu in June 2008 as the children's ministry coordinator. It was the second time I was crossing Karuma. I went as an act of faith. My parents didn't support me 100%. They were reluctant because I thought I needn't go so far to work. But okay, they didn't support the choice per se. They supported me, the person, and I'm grateful for that because it was a very learning, like a good period for me to learn and to grow up and to just depend on God, being far from home. So working with children like full time is one of I don't know. It was very good for me. Like, first of all, I think Gulu really taught me to depend on God in a way that being at home didn't, because the work itself was really fun. Like, children challenge you, grow you. But when it was hard, it was so hard for me to tell my parents because they'll just tell me come back. So I never told them stuff to this day. I never told them the really difficult things because I thought they would not help. I thought they would just tell me to come back. So I hung in there. I mean, the difficult things are the difficult things of life when you miss home and what wasn't anything like major. But so I formed definitely friendships in Gulu. I trained. So we also asked people to volunteer at the church, and we got people working. I mean, working people who would volunteer to be Sunday school teachers. We got a team. We had trainings. We did a lot of stuff together, and to this day, some of them are really some of my closest friends. And eventually, anyway, I left Gulu in 2009. A year and a half later, I left Gulu. But that was a very good season of my life, and I probably could go back and work in Gulu. Anyhow, so that's active service. Well, it was a job, but it was like I was really plugged in church, and that was really, really good for me. When I came back, I resigned from my job in 2009 and came back to Kampala. I mean, honestly, because I think I had like burnout, and it became less enjoyable for me, and it just became like work, and I said, you know what, I can't do this back in Kampala. So that's why I resigned and came back, because it was really burnout. I was not enjoying it anymore. I mean, I don't know about people having to enjoy work every day, but I think for me it has to be more than money. That can't take that. I can't go to work just for money. Yeah, so I came back to Kampala and got a job with an architectural firm, but I continued doing children's ministry in the children's home in Bira, Watoto Bira, which was really, really good for me as well. So I'd go every weekend, continue to teach children, the Sunday school teacher stuff. I continued doing that until 2012 when my sister had her child and I got into babysitting. Yeah, so I had a gap. So I was really continuing teaching Sunday school until babysitting time in 2012. So there was that gap, like 2012 till maybe 2014 until about 17, where I was kind of like not in active ministry anymore. Sometimes I would go if I needed help, I would help, but I was not consistent like how you're a rota on in the ministry. So, but then the other thing that I was involved in was All Saints has a prisons ministry, and because my dad was in prison at that time, I was fully engaged. Actually, the person who encouraged me to join was a former prisoner, Zera Kasisi. And so I became part of that team, which was so good for me. I'd go to prisons, just encourage people. And for me, I think sometimes people were just encouraged by my presence there because most of them knew my dad. And so it wasn't so much maybe even what I had to say, if I said anything at all. It was just introducing myself as so-and-so's child. It really blessed people. So half the time people were telling you, oh, your dad has been really nice to us, or oh, you're so-and-so's daughter. I don't know, I think they felt that they could relate with me to a degree because I was an inmate child. So prison ministry has also been good for me. I've not been as consistent in the last maybe 2 years, for one reason or the other, but it's just another ministry that I don't know, that I deeply care about, but I've not been as engaged in as I should be. So the thing about All Saints Prison Ministry, remember I was going to Watoto Church, and because I was doing the All Saints Prison Ministry with them because my dad was in jail, I hung out a lot at All Saints, so I got to know what was going on at All Saints, and also formed friendships with people at All Saints, which I think is fantastic, to just go outside your little church bubble and meet other Christians. And so one of the things, sometimes we'd sit in the youth office and talk about this or the other, and sometimes we'd get into all these conversations with all these new pastors or prophets in town, and it would get a bit frustrating because I was also getting into those with my friends. And I think for me the frustration was saying that this thing is wrong, like this guy is a con man. I would say that to my friends sometimes, and I was not able to articulate why. So I knew I needed equipping to be able to point out truth. Thankfully, one of my cousins, she's called Pendo, she told me about a program called Equipping to Serve. A course really that was running in different churches, was running by a college called Veritas College, but now it has been rebranded as Mazima College, and they would really take you through how to study the Bible right. So when she told me about it, because of the kind of conversations we would have, I decided to give it a shot. So I enrolled in 2017 to do the first module. So it's modular, it's four modules, and the way it's done is according to the students. So it's like tailor-made to the students, and it's not like rote classroom learning. I can tell you more about Mazima, but the point is we would sit, we'd have someone facilitating the discussion, going through how to study the Word of God, for example, like saying things like, well, it's a book written by men, it's also God inspired, but also like the different styles of writing, literature, and all that. And I mean, for me who comes from also a literature background, it was very, very exciting. Like if you love language, and so it gave me a better appreciation of the Bible, but better still, it helped me be able to understand for myself first the Bible better, and to be able to articulate my faith to others better. So I highly recommend Mazima College. And then the other thing, so I did the 4 modules. I just finished actually the last one last year, and I was going once a week, and I really formed some really good friendships in those classes. And then the other thing that I've done that has really equipped me was actually someone also, an All Saints person that I met through Mazima, Manzi Kajina, introduced me to Perspectives on the World Christian Movement. And now this one is a missions-based course. So I also said, let me check it out, what's there to lose? So I was actually doing this one concurrently with Mazima. And when I went, the class that I took, we had it at the pastor's home in Chisasi. So Perspectives is really helping us be mission-minded. When you think about the Great Commission, what is that to us individually, and to understand that, like, what are we here for? Are we here for God's glory? How do we extend God's kingdom? Are we actually telling people about Jesus? Are we actively doing that? Or is it like something we think about and don't pursue? So perspectives of the World Christian Movement, we cover 4 perspectives. There's the biblical perspectives where they take you through the Bible, Genesis to Revelation, to see how God is missional, how God pursues people. And then we have the historical perspective. We see how the church, from the early church, from the time of Jesus' ascension, often when we think of the Bible, after the early church, there's often a gap, and then we think of Reformation. But for me, that connection of God at work between the ascension to the Reformation has been such a blessing, how God worked through all kinds of things. So yeah, we do the history of the movement of the Christian movement, really, the movement of the church. I mean, we talk about people like monks and how God used that. We talk about even colonialism. So that was really fantastic. Then we do the cultural perspectives, how to take the gospel cross-culturally. Oh my gosh, if you love culture, that's also really cool. And then the last perspective is the strategic. So how do we be part of this mission? How do we plug into God's story? Yeah, so that's been really, really good for me. I highly recommend perspectives. I've been talking to some of my friends about it. I've convinced only one so far who has actually started from the beginning to the end, and she loves it as well. So I encourage us, actually, Christians, to be mission-minded. We're not here just to exist and just go by, but to actually tell people about Jesus, to make his name known. Yeah, that's another thing that has been very, very good for me. So in doing perspectives of the Christian movement and re-examining how I think about God and my reason for being here, existing for the glory of God. I mean, what's the chief end of man? To glorify God by enjoying him. And you think you know that, but when you look at your life, sometimes you wonder if that's what you're living for. And I started questioning, so I started having like issues with like the sermons at church. Sorry, Watoto. I talked to some of my pastors about it. Really, how I would sit in church and I'm like, really, is this what I came for? I felt like it was a lot of self-help. This is really me. I felt like I needed more Bible and not just quotes. I needed to understand the Bible in context. So I started questioning everything. I had a few conversations with some of my pastors over and over, back and forth, until I decided to leave the church, which is sad. But I thank God that I had this conversation with my pastor. And he told me, you know what, if you're not content, it's okay, you go. You can always come back if it's tight, which was very interesting. But yeah, I like that liberty for him to understand where I was coming from, but also, yeah, for me to know it's okay for me to move on. And because when I visited this new church that I'm now attending, Berea Baptist, one of the things that I really loved was the Bible study before church. I don't know when I really last had that. Like, not personal, I mean I was actually doing a Bible study with friends, but I mean like a church thing where you're doing book by book and engaging before the sermon. That's what really made me move to Berea. Like the centricity of the Bible in the sermons and in everything else. And also one thing that also Berea has done for me so far, is questioning a lot of the things that I really believe. Like so I was a feminist. I don't know if I'm saying was, because I don't really feel like I've really moved over, but I'm rethinking feminism a lot. I'm rethinking humanism. I'm rethinking a lot of things that I was doing, engaged in. I've not really completely thrown them out, but it's really made me rethink worldviews and why these things, and what does the Bible say about it, and what's king, so to speak, like what's primary. I'm rethinking a lot of things. Those are the kind of questions I hope to have. I mean, for example, in feminism, I love Chimamanda's books. I agree with a lot of things she says, but it's the solutions that I have problems with, because they're very man-centered. They're man-centric, and I don't think we can solve our own problems. So as a Christian who is to argue that you can be Christian and feminist, I'm kind of wondering if that's actually possible. A part of me thinks maybe, because I was still Christian the whole time I was arguing that, but just making me think if this is something I should give myself to, as opposed to actually teaching the word of God that actually changes men's hearts. Yeah. So that has been very, very good for me. As you can see, really, I think if you see one thing that has run through, has been the active service. My last video I talked about service and equipping. But again, things don't change. It's the same disciplines. Actively serving keeps us engaged and learning and growing and equipping ourselves. So think about how you can equip yourselves better. Please ask questions. It's okay to re-examine the things that you believe. It's okay to doubt. It's okay to, I don't know, we are always growing and changing. I hope this helps somebody. I'm still on the journey. It never ends until Jesus comes back or until I die. So I hope you're blessed and have a good day. God bless. Okay, I know I said bye, but there's something important I forgot to read to us as scripture for the day. The one that I really believe resonates with this season of my life still. And we're reading from Philippians chapter 3, verses 7 to 11. But just for context sake, here Paul writes to the Philippians about putting no confidence in the flesh. So from verse 7 to 11 it reads, "But whatever was to my profit, I now consider loss for the sake of Christ. What is more, I consider everything a loss compared to the surpassing greatness of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord, for whose sake I have lost all things. I consider them rubbish, that I may gain Christ and be found in him, not having a righteousness of my own that comes from the law, but that which is through faith in Christ, the righteousness that comes from God and is by faith. I want to know Christ and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of sharing in his sufferings, becoming like him in his death, and so somehow to attain the resurrection from the dead." I really like verse 10. I want to know Christ. Because knowing Christ is a very ongoing thing. May that be our desire. May we say with Paul, I want to know Christ. God bless. Bye.